The radio crackled with desperate static as Lieutenant Olivia Blackwood pressed the emergency transmitter against her ear. The coordinates were coming through broken and distorted, but she could make out enough to understand the gravity of the situation. 50 of America's most elite operators, Delta Force, were trapped behind enemy lines with no extraction plan. Command had officially declared them unrecoverable, but Olivia knew something the Pentagon didn't. Her father's classified Green Beret intelligence network was still active in that region, and she was the only one who could access it. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The subterranean command bunker hummed with nervous energy as Colonel Richard Hargrove paced between monitoring stations. 3 hours had passed since losing contact with the Delta Force team in the mountains of Eastern Europe, and the situation was deteriorating rapidly. Satellite imagery showed enemy forces converging on the presumed location of the missing operators, and weather conditions were making air extraction impossible. "Scramble another reconnaissance drone," Hargrove ordered, his voice tight with frustration. "There has to be something we're missing." Technical Sergeant Megan Reeves adjusted her headset and leaned closer to her monitoring station. The blue glow of the tactical display cast harsh shadows across her face as she studied the encrypted communications streaming across her screen. "Sir, I'm picking up unusual traffic on an old frequency," Reeves reported. "Someone's accessing comms protocols that haven't been used in years." Hargrove's head snapped up. "What kind of protocols?" "Green Beret Intelligence Network, sir. Specifically, the ghost channels established during Operation Phantom Echo in 2017. The room fell silent. Operation Phantom Echo had been a classified intelligence-gathering mission conducted by elite Green Beret units, establishing covert networks throughout hostile territory. Most of those networks had been officially decommissioned or abandoned after the operation concluded. "That's impossible," Hargrove muttered, moving to stand behind Reeves. "Those channels were shut down years ago. The access codes were classified beyond top secret." On the main display screen, a small blinking dot appeared, moving steadily through hostile territory. The tracking signature showed someone navigating through the treacherous mountain passes with remarkable speed and precision, heading directly toward the last known location of the missing Delta Force team. "Who authorized this?" Hargrove demanded, his voice cutting through the tension in the room. "Who the hell is out there?" Reeves typed rapidly, her fingers dancing across the keyboard as she attempted to identify the signature. "The system can't get a clear identification, sir. Whoever it is knows how to mask their digital footprint." The communications officer, Lieutenant James Wilson, cleared his throat. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission on the emergency channel. Audio only." "Put it through," Hargrove ordered. A woman's voice, clear and steady despite the static interference, filled the command center. "Command, this is Blackwood. I'm tracking the Delta team through my father's network. Request permission to continue search and rescue operation." Hargrove's face drained of color. "Olivia Blackwood? Thomas Blackwood's daughter?" "Yes, sir," came the reply. "I have access to resources you don't. The Delta team is still alive, but they won't be for long if we don't act now." Thomas Blackwood had been a legend in special operations circles, a Green Beret commander who had established intelligence networks throughout Eastern Europe that operated outside normal military channels. His methods had been unorthodox but effective, creating systems that survived long after official operations concluded. After his death 3 years ago in a classified operation, his networks had supposedly been dismantled. Apparently, they hadn't been, at least not completely. "Blackwood, you are operating without authorization in hostile territory," Hargrove responded, struggling to maintain protocol. "You need to withdraw immediately." "With respect, sir, that's not going to happen," Olivia replied. "I'm already 12 miles inside the exclusion zone. The Delta team is approximately 15 miles northeast of my position, moving toward a cave system in the Seredny Ridge. I can reach them within 3 hours." "How do you know their location?" Wilson asked, unable to hide his surprise. "We lost track of them when their communications went dark." "My father's network is still active," Olivia explained. "Local assets are tracking them. The team is being pursued by approximately 30 hostile forces, heavily armed. They have wounded and are running low on ammunition. They need extraction immediately." Hargrove exchanged glances with his senior staff. The situation was unprecedented. Olivia Blackwood was a civilian, the daughter of a legendary operator but still a civilian. She had no official standing, no authorization, and no support structure. But she was also the only person who seemed to have actionable intelligence on the missing Delta team. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. How did you even get into the exclusion zone? Hargrove asked. That area is locked down tight. My father taught me more than just how to access his networks, Olivia replied, a hint of pride in her voice. I've been planning this operation since you declared the team unrecoverable 6 hours ago. The implications sank in slowly. Olivia hadn't just accessed classified intelligence networks. She had infiltrated a hostile exclusion zone on her own, navigating through enemy territory without detection. It suggested a level of training that went far beyond what any civilian should possess. Stand by, Blackwood, Hargrove said, muting the transmission. He turned to his intelligence officer, Captain Sarah Donovan. What do we know about Thomas Blackwood's daughter? Donovan accessed her terminal, pulling up personnel files. Olivia Blackwood, 29 years old. Civilian consultant with advanced degrees in cryptography and geospatial intelligence. She was employed by various defense contractors until her father's death 3 years ago. Since then, she's been off the grid, at least officially. Unofficially? Hargrove pressed. Donovan hesitated. There are rumors, sir. Thomas Blackwood was known for operating outside standard protocols. Some believed he was training his daughter in specialized skills, the kind not taught in any official capacity. You're saying he was running an unauthorized training program for his own daughter? Wilson asked incredulously. Thomas always said the best insurance policy was knowledge passed down, Reeves interjected quietly. Everyone turned to look at her. I served with him briefly in 2016. He mentioned his daughter often, said she could navigate hostile territory better than most special forces operators by the time she was 20. Hargrove considered this information, weighing protocol against the reality of the situation. 50 Delta Force operators, America's most elite military personnel, were trapped behind enemy lines. Standard extraction was impossible due to weather and political complications. And now, the daughter of a legendary Green Beret was offering the only viable chance of rescue, using networks that officially didn't exist. Put her back on, Hargrove ordered. When the channel reopened, Olivia was still moving, her breathing steady, despite what must have been a punishing pace through difficult terrain. Blackwood, I need to be absolutely clear, Hargrove said. You're proposing to locate and extract 50 Delta operators from hostile territory, using intelligence networks that officially don't exist, without any official support or backup. Is that correct? Not exactly, sir, Olivia replied. I don't need to locate them. I already know where they are, and I don't need to extract them alone. My father's network includes local assets who can provide transportation. What I need from you is tactical support and a secure extraction point once we cross the border. The confidence in her voice was unsettling. This wasn't bravado or desperation. This was someone speaking from a position of absolute certainty. How extensive is this network? Hargrove asked. Extensive enough, Olivia answered cryptically. My father believed in redundancy. Another officer, Major Frank Thompson, joined the conversation. Colonel, this is insanity. We can't authorize a civilian to conduct a rescue operation in hostile territory, especially not using unauthorized intelligence networks. Those 50 men were declared unrecoverable, Olivia cut in, her voice hardening. You've already abandoned them. I haven't. The accusation hung in the air, sharp and undeniable. Protocol dictated that the Delta team was beyond rescue. The political and military risks of a large-scale extraction were too great, but abandoning them felt like a betrayal of the most fundamental military principle: leave no one behind. How did you know they were even there? Hargrove asked. That operation was classified at the highest levels. My father's networks don't stop gathering intelligence just because he's dead, Olivia replied. I've been monitoring the situation since the team crossed the border 4 days ago. When communications went dark, I activated emergency protocols. The implications were staggering. Thomas Blackwood had created an intelligence network so robust that it continued functioning years after his death, accessible only to his daughter. It operated outside official channels, gathering information on classified operations without authorization or oversight. In any other circumstance, this would constitute a severe security breach. But right now, it might be the only thing that could save 50 American operators. "I'm approaching the first waypoint," Olivia reported. Local assets confirm the Delta team has reached the cave system, but enemy forces are closing in. They have approximately 2 hours before their position is overrun. Hargrove made his decision. "Blackwood, this conversation never happened. You are operating without official authorization or support. If you're captured, the United States government will deny any knowledge of your activities." "I understand, sir," Olivia replied, without hesitation. "That said," Hargrove continued, "if you can reach the border at these coordinates by 0600 hours tomorrow, there might be an extraction team in the vicinity. Purely coincidental, of course." "Of course," Olivia agreed, and Hargrove could almost hear the smile in her voice. "Sending the coordinates now," Reeves said, transmitting the information through the secure channel. "One more thing," Hargrove added. "The team leader is Major David Reynolds. Tell him Nighthawk sends his regards." "Will do, sir," Olivia acknowledged. Blackwood out. As the transmission ended, the command center fell into uneasy silence. They had just tacitly authorized a civilian to conduct a rescue operation in hostile territory, using unauthorized intelligence networks, without any official support or backup. "If this works, it'll be a miracle," Thompson muttered. "If this works," Hargrove replied, "it'll be because Thomas Blackwood was thinking 5 steps ahead, even from the grave." On the main display, the small blinking dot that represented Olivia Blackwood continued moving steadily through hostile territory, carrying the hopes of 50 men and their families. In the mountains of Eastern Europe, Olivia Blackwood moved with practiced efficiency through the dense forest. The weight of her father's legacy pressed against her with each step, not just metaphorically but physically, in the form of the specialized equipment she carried. A custom-designed communications unit, a tactical tablet containing encrypted maps of the region, a series of access codes to safe houses and emergency caches established years ago. All of it designed by Thomas Blackwood, entrusted only to his daughter. The terrain was treacherous. Steep slopes covered in loose rock, dense forest that limited visibility, streams swollen with recent rainfall. But Olivia navigated it with the confidence of someone who had studied these mountains extensively, both in theory and in practice. Her father had brought her here 6 years ago, ostensibly for a hiking trip. In reality, it had been an intensive training exercise, learning to navigate the terrain, memorizing key landmarks, understanding the flow of local movement patterns. Thomas Blackwood had always insisted that knowledge of the land was the most fundamental survival skill. "When everything else fails," he'd told her, "knowing the land will keep you alive." As she reached the crest of a ridge, Olivia paused to check her bearings. The tactical tablet showed her position relative to the Delta team, still about 12 miles away, moving slowly due to wounded personnel. Enemy forces were converging from multiple directions, using the main roads and established trails. Olivia chose a different route, one that didn't appear on any official maps. A hunter's path that wound through a section of forest so dense it appeared impassable to satellite reconnaissance. Her father had documented dozens of such paths throughout the region, creating a hidden network that allowed for movement undetected by conventional surveillance. The sun was beginning to set, casting long shadows through the trees. Olivia activated the night vision function on her tactical goggles and continued moving. In the distance, she could hear the faint sound of helicopter rotors, enemy search parties expanding their operation as darkness fell. After another hour of careful progress, Olivia reached the first waypoint, a small shepherd's hut that had served as a safe house during Operation Phantom Echo. To casual observation, it appeared abandoned, slowly being reclaimed by the surrounding forest. But Olivia knew better. She approached cautiously, using the recognition signal her father had established, 3 short flashes from her tactical light, followed by 2 long ones. Moments later, a figure emerged from the shadows beside the hut, an older man with weathered features and calculating eyes, dressed in the simple clothes of a local farmer. "I didn't believe it when they said Thomas Blackwood's daughter was coming," he said in heavily accented English. "But here you are." "Mikhail," Olivia greeted him, recognizing the man from her father's extensive files. "I need transportation and current intelligence on enemy positions." The man nodded, gesturing for her to follow him inside the hut. The Americans are in trouble. The enemy knows they're in the cave system and are preparing to flush them out. Inside, the hut's rustic exterior gave way to sophisticated equipment hidden beneath false floors and behind concealed panels. A communications setup, weapons cache, and medical supplies, all maintained in perfect condition despite years of disuse. How many local assets are still active? Olivia asked, studying a detailed map that Mikhail spread across a small table. 6 who can be trusted completely, Mikhail replied. Another 12 who will help for the right price. I don't need 12, Olivia said. I need the 6 I can trust and 3 vehicles capable of handling rough terrain. Mikhail nodded. It can be arranged. But you should know, the Americans are in worse shape than reported. At least 5 seriously wounded, including their commander. Olivia absorbed this information, recalculating the extraction plan. We'll need a medical team at the border crossing. Already arranged, Mikhail assured her. Your father's contingency protocols were very specific. This was the genius of Thomas Blackwood's network. Layers of contingencies, backup plans for backup plans. He had established an intelligence system that operated independently of official channels, maintained by local assets who remained loyal years after official operations concluded. Show me the current enemy positions, Olivia requested. Mikhail activated a concealed computer terminal, displaying real-time intelligence gathered from various sources. Local informants, hacked security systems, and discrete surveillance operations conducted by network members. 3 main search groups, Mikhail explained, indicating their positions on the digital map. They're establishing a perimeter around the cave system, planning to move in at first light. Olivia studied the pattern, noting vulnerabilities in the enemy's deployment. They're thin on the northern approach. Why? Terrain is considered impassable, Mikhail replied with a slight smile. Steep cliffs, dense forest, no established trails. But there is a way through, Olivia stated rather than asked. Mikhail's smile widened. Your father found it. Only he and I ever used it. And now me, Olivia added, memorizing the route as Mikhail traced it on the map. For the next hour, they refined the extraction plan, coordinating with other network members through secure channels. Transportation would be ready at strategic points. Diversions would be created to draw enemy forces away from the extraction route. Medical supplies would be waiting at each checkpoint to treat the wounded during the journey. As they worked, Olivia could feel her father's presence in every aspect of the operation. The network he had built was more than just an intelligence-gathering system. It was his legacy, a testament to his understanding that official channels sometimes failed, that redundancy could mean the difference between life and death. He talked about you often, Mikhail said quietly as they finalized the preparations. Said you were his greatest achievement. Olivia looked up, surprised by the personal comment. He never told me that. Thomas was not a man who shared his feelings easily, Mikhail replied. But he was proud of you. Said you had a natural talent for this work, seeing patterns, understanding systems, finding paths where others saw only obstacles. Before Olivia could respond, the communication system signaled an incoming transmission. It was from the command center, Colonel Hargrove, providing an update on the Delta team situation. Blackwood, we have intermittent communication with the team, Hargrove reported. Major Reynolds confirms 5 seriously wounded, 15 with minor injuries. They're running low on medical supplies and ammunition. Enemy forces are establishing positions around all known exits from the cave system. Understood, Olivia replied. I'm at the first waypoint with local assets. We have transportation and an extraction route. Request permission to communicate directly with Major Reynolds. There was a pause before Hargrove responded. Permission granted. Patching you through now. The line crackled, then a new voice came through, strained with exhaustion and stress. This is Major Reynolds. Who am I speaking with? Olivia Blackwood, sir. Thomas Blackwood's daughter. There was a moment of stunned silence before Reynolds responded. Thomas Blackwood? The Green Beret commander? The same, Olivia confirmed. I'm accessing my father's intelligence network to coordinate your extraction. We can reach your position via the northern approach to the cave system. There's a passage that doesn't appear on any maps. That's impossible, Reynolds argued. We've scouted the northern section. It's sheer cliffs and dense forest. "There's a hunter's path that threads between the cliff faces," Olivia explained. "It's narrow and difficult, but it's unmonitored by enemy forces. We can have vehicles waiting at the exit point, 2 miles from your current position." Reynolds was silent for a moment, clearly weighing his options. His team was trapped, running low on supplies, with wounded personnel who couldn't move quickly. Standard extraction had been deemed impossible. And now, the daughter of a legendary Green Beret was offering a lifeline through intelligence networks that officially didn't exist. "How do I know this isn't an enemy trap?" he finally asked. "Colonel Hargrove said to tell you Nighthawk sends his regards," Olivia replied. Another pause then. "All right, Ms. Blackwood. What's your plan?" Over the next 20 minutes, Olivia outlined the extraction strategy, coordinating with both Reynolds and McHale to ensure every detail was covered. The Delta team would need to move their wounded through the cave system to a specific exit point on the northern side. From there, local assets would guide them along the hidden path to vehicles waiting at strategic locations. The journey to the border would take approximately 8 hours, using routes that avoided enemy checkpoints and surveillance. "We'll create diversions to draw enemy attention away from your movement," Olivia explained. "But you'll need to move quickly and quietly. The window of opportunity is narrow." "When do we move?" Reynolds asked. 2 hours before dawn," Olivia replied. "The enemy expects you to attempt a breakout at first light, when visibility is better. We'll move during the darkest hours, when their vigilance is lowest." "And you'll meet us at the northern exit?" Reynolds confirmed. "I'll be there," Olivia promised. With medical supplies and transportation, as the communication ended, Mikhail was already mobilizing the local network, sending in coded messages to trusted assets throughout the region. Vehicles were being prepared, medical supplies gathered, diversionary tactics coordinated. Olivia checked her equipment one final time, ensuring everything was functioning properly. The journey to the cave system would be dangerous, moving through hostile territory in the dead of night, navigating treacherous terrain with only her father's detailed maps as guidance. "Your father would be proud," Mikhail said as he handed her a small package. "Emergency supplies, including his personal medical kit." Olivia accepted the package, recognizing the worn leather case that had accompanied her father on countless missions. Inside were specialized medical supplies, advanced hemostatic agents, concentrated pain relievers, emergency surgical tools. The kind of equipment that could keep critically wounded personnel alive long enough to reach proper medical care. "He always said preparation meant the difference between success and failure," Olivia replied, securing the kit in her pack. Mikhail nodded solemnly. Thomas Blackwood prepared for everything, including his own death. Why else would he have trained you so thoroughly? He knew this day might come. The realization settled over Olivia like a physical weight. Her father's intensive training, the detailed knowledge he had shared about his networks and operations, the skills he had insisted she master, all of it had been preparation for this moment. As if he had foreseen a time when his networks would be needed to save lives, but he wouldn't be there to activate them. "I won't fail them," Olivia said quietly, more to herself than to Mikhail. "Of course you won't," Mikhail replied with absolute certainty. "You are Thomas Blackwood's daughter." With final preparations complete, Olivia shouldered her pack and stepped back into the darkness. The extraction point was still hours away, through some of the most challenging terrain in the region. But she moved with confidence, guided by her father's maps and her own training. Behind her, Mikhail watched until she disappeared into the forest before returning to coordinate the local assets. The network Thomas Blackwood had built was coming fully alive for the first time in years, rallying around his daughter as they once had around him. In the command center, Colonel Hargrove monitored the situation with growing tension. The operation had no official sanction, no documented support structure. If it failed, 50 of America's most elite operators would be lost. If it succeeded, it would be due to intelligence networks that officially didn't exist, activated by a civilian operating without authorization. Either way, the outcome would challenge everything the military thought it knew about operation security, intelligence gathering, and the legacy of one Green Beret commander who had apparently planned for contingencies that extended years beyond his death. As dawn approached, Olivia reached the northern perimeter of the cave system, moving silently through terrain that enemy forces had deemed impassable. In the distance, she could see their searchlights sweeping across the main approaches, their attention focused on the obvious exit points. But Thomas Blackwood had never been interested in the obvious. He had specialized in finding paths that others overlooked, in creating systems that operated in the spaces between official operations. And now, his daughter was putting those lessons into practice, carrying his legacy through the darkness toward 50 men who had been declared unrecoverable. The fate of America's most elite military unit now rested in the hands of a woman who had inherited more than just her father's name. She had inherited his networks, his knowledge, and his unwavering commitment to leaving no one behind. Dawn was breaking over the mountains as Major David Reynolds checked his watch for the 5th time in as many minutes. The cave system that had been their temporary sanctuary was growing more claustrophobic by the hour. 5 of his men were seriously wounded, requiring constant medical attention with dwindling supplies. The rest were exhausted, running on adrenaline and training that pushed human endurance to its limits. "Sir, movement at the north entrance," whispered Lieutenant Garcia, the team's scout who had been monitoring the narrow passage they'd previously dismissed as unusable. Reynolds tensed. "Hostile? Single individual. Moving with tactical precision." The Delta operators shifted into defensive positions, weapons ready despite their depleted ammunition. They'd been tracking enemy movements all night, increasing patrols, tightening perimeters, preparations for what would likely be a final assault at full daylight. "Hold fire," Reynolds ordered quietly. "Could be our contact." The figure that emerged from the shadows moved with a fluid economy of motion that spoke of extensive training. Medium height, athletic build, equipped with tactical gear that matched no standard military issue Reynolds had ever seen. As the figure approached, moonlight revealed a face framed by a tight braid of dark hair. "Major Reynolds?" The voice was unmistakably female, confident but hushed. "Identify yourself," Reynolds demanded, keeping his weapon trained on the newcomer. "Olivia Blackwood. We spoke via secure communication 6 hours ago." Reynolds studied her carefully. Nothing about her appearance suggested civilian status. From her movement patterns to her equipment setup, everything screamed specialized operator. Yet according to command, she was the daughter of a legendary Green Beret, operating without official sanction. "Nighthawk sends his regards," she added, using the verification code they'd established. Reynolds lowered his weapon. "Ms. Blackwood." "Just Blackwood is fine," she replied, immediately moving toward the wounded men. "We need to move quickly. Enemy forces are repositioning for a dawn assault. Their current focus is on the eastern and southern exits, but that won't last." She knelt beside the most severely wounded operator, a sergeant with a chest wound that had been stabilized but required proper medical attention. With practiced efficiency, she opened a worn leather medical kit and began examining his injuries. "This is your father's kit," Reynolds observed, recognizing the distinctive case that had been legendary among special operations personnel. "You knew him?" Olivia asked without looking up, her hands steady as she applied advanced hemostatic agents to the wound. "Trained with him in 2016. 3-week course on unconventional extraction techniques." Reynolds watched as she worked, her movements precise and confident. He never mentioned having a daughter who could navigate hostile territory and access classified intelligence networks. A ghost of a smile crossed Olivia's face. "My father compartmentalized everything, including family. Need-to-know basis only." She finished treating the wounded sergeant and moved to the next man. "These 2 can't walk. We'll need to carry them." Reynolds signaled to 4 of his strongest operators. "Jensen, Miller, Garcia, Townsend, you're on stretcher duty. Everyone else, prepare to move out. Minimal equipment, maximum ammunition." As the Delta team prepared for movement, Olivia pulled up a detailed topographical map on her tactical tablet. "We'll exit through the northern passage and follow this route." She traced a path that didn't appear on any standard military maps. It's a hunter's trail that threads between 2 cliff faces. Narrow and difficult, but unmonitored by enemy forces. "That path isn't on our maps," Lieutenant Wilson, the team's navigation specialist, noted with suspicion. "It wouldn't be," Olivia replied. "My father documented it during Operation Phantom Echo. It was never included in official reports." This was the reality they were facing, relying on intelligence that existed outside official channels, pathways known only to a Green Beret commander who had operated by his own rules and the daughter who had inherited his knowledge. 2 miles from the exit point we'll have vehicles waiting, Olivia continued. 3 local assets with transportation capable of handling wounded personnel. We'll split into 3 groups to minimize visibility." "And these locals are trustworthy?" Reynolds asked. "They were loyal to my father for 15 years, Olivia answered. "Their network has remained intact, despite official abandonment. They understand the stakes." Reynolds studied the proposed route, looking for vulnerabilities or tactical weaknesses. Finding none, he nodded. "We move in 5 minutes. Standard extraction formation, wounded in the center, security elements front and rear." As the team made final preparations, Olivia contacted Mikhail through an encrypted channel, confirming that the vehicles were in position and the diversionary tactics were ready to be implemented. "Everything is prepared," Mikhail assured her. "The enemy forces are focused on the main access roads. Our path remains clear. Execute diversionary tactics in 15 minutes, Olivia instructed. "We need their attention drawn as far from the northern exit as possible." With preparations complete, the Delta team began moving through the narrow passage that led to the northern exit of the cave system. The wounded were secured on improvised stretchers, carried by operators who moved with practiced efficiency despite their own exhaustion. Reynolds took position beside Olivia, studying her as they navigated the difficult terrain. "Command says you're a civilian." "Technically correct," Olivia replied, her eyes constantly scanning their surroundings. "No civilian moves like you do," Reynolds observed, "or accesses classified intelligence networks, or navigates hostile territory with tactical precision." Olivia's expression remained neutral. "My father believed in thorough education." The implications were clear. Thomas Blackwood had trained his daughter outside official channels, teaching her skills that were typically reserved for elite military personnel. It was unprecedented, unauthorized, and possibly illegal. It was also the only reason 50 Delta operators now had a chance at survival. As they neared the exit, Olivia held up a hand, signaling for the group to halt. She moved forward alone, examining the terrain beyond the cave entrance, with specialized thermal optics that detected no human presence. "Clear," she reported, gesturing for the team to proceed. "Move quickly, but carefully. The path is narrow and exposed in sections." The first rays of dawn were breaking over the mountains as the Delta team emerged from the cave system. In the distance, they could hear the sound of explosions, Mikhail's diversionary tactics drawing enemy attention to the opposite side of the valley. The path Olivia led them along was barely visible, a narrow track that wound between sheer cliff faces and through dense forest. It required careful navigation, especially with the wounded on stretchers, but it provided excellent cover from aerial reconnaissance and bypassed all known enemy positions. "How did your father find this route?" Reynolds asked, as they navigated a particularly challenging section. "He spent 6 months in these mountains, mapping every trail, cave, and stream," Olivia explained. "He believed in knowing terrain better than the people who lived there." "And he taught all this to you?" "Not at first," Olivia admitted. "Initially, he kept his work completely separate from family life. That changed after my mother died. I was 16, and suddenly his only family. I think he realized that his knowledge would die with him unless he passed it on." Reynolds considered this: the training of a daughter in specialized military skills, the sharing of classified intelligence networks. It went against every protocol in the book, yet it had created an insurance policy that was now saving 50 lives. "Command said you were a cryptography specialist," Reynolds noted. "That's my official occupation," Olivia confirmed. It provided cover for other activities. Before Reynolds could inquire further, Lieutenant Garcia signaled from his forward position. "Vehicles ahead." 3 SUVs with local drivers. Olivia nodded. "That's our transportation. The lead driver is Mikhail, my father's primary contact in the region. The others are network members who've remained loyal." The vehicles were positioned strategically, concealed from aerial observation by dense tree cover. As the Delta team approached, Mikhail emerged from the lead vehicle, his weathered face showing no surprise at the condition of the wounded operators. "We must move quickly," he advised. "Enemy forces have realized the explosions were diversions. They will begin expanding their search pattern soon." With practiced efficiency, the wounded were loaded into the vehicles, with the most severe cases in Mikhail's SUV, where advanced medical equipment had been installed. The remaining operators split between the 3 vehicles, maintaining tactical distribution of firepower. 16 in each vehicle, Olivia instructed. We'll take different routes to the border, converging at the final extraction point. Reynolds nodded, impressed by the thoroughness of the plan. Command has arranged extraction once we cross the border. If we cross the border, Olivia corrected, we still have 80 miles of hostile territory to navigate, with multiple checkpoints and patrol zones. The gravity of their situation remained clear. Despite the successful extraction from the cave system, they were still deep in enemy territory, with wounded personnel and limited resources. The border crossing would be the most dangerous part of the journey, requiring perfect timing and coordination. As they prepared to depart, Reynolds pulled Olivia aside. "Why are you doing this? These aren't your men. This isn't your mission." Olivia's expression hardened slightly. "When Command declared your team unrecoverable, they broke the most fundamental promise made to every operator, that they will never be abandoned. My father lived by a different code." "And you inherited that code," Reynolds observed. "Along with everything else," Olivia confirmed. "Now, we need to move." The 3 vehicles departed at staggered intervals, taking separate routes that had been carefully planned to avoid known enemy positions. Olivia rode with Mikhail, constantly monitoring communications and updating their route based on real-time intelligence from network assets throughout the region. In the command center, Colonel Hargrove watched the operation unfold through limited satellite reconnaissance. The 3 vehicles appeared as small heat signatures moving through difficult terrain, carefully avoiding main roads and population centers. "They've cleared the immediate danger zone," Technical Sergeant Reeves reported. "Estimated time to border crossing is 7 hours, assuming no complications." Hargrove nodded, allowing himself a moment of cautious optimism. The first phase, extracting the Delta team from the cave system, had succeeded against all odds. But the most dangerous part of the journey still lay ahead. "Maintain satellite coverage as long as possible," he ordered, "and prepare the extraction team at the border. Full medical support for multiple critical casualties." Major Thompson approached, his expression troubled. "Sir, this entire operation exists outside official channels. The use of unauthorized intelligence networks, civilian involvement in a military extraction, cooperation with foreign nationals not cleared through proper channels. It violates at least 15 regulations." "I'm aware of the regulations, Major," Hargrove replied tersely. "I'm also aware that 50 Delta operators are alive right now, because Thomas Blackwood built systems that survived his death, and his daughter had the courage to activate them when official channels declared the mission impossible." "And when this is over?" Thompson pressed. "What happens to those networks? To Blackwood's daughter? To the locals who've been operating an intelligence system outside our control for years?" It was a question Hargrove had been grappling with since the operation began. Thomas Blackwood had created something unprecedented, an intelligence network that operated in the spaces between official channels, maintained by personal loyalty rather than institutional control. His daughter had inherited not just his knowledge but his methodology, his connections, his understanding of systems that existed beyond official documentation. "One problem at a time, Major," Hargrove replied. "Let's get our people home first." In the lead vehicle, Olivia was navigating a particularly treacherous mountain road, using her father's detailed maps to find paths that bypassed known checkpoints. Beside her, Mikhail drove with the steady confidence of someone intimately familiar with the terrain. 2 patrols ahead, Mikhail reported, receiving information through his own communications network. "They have established a roadblock at the Valley Junction." Olivia studied the map, identifying an alternative route. "There's a logging road 3 kilometers east. Can we reach it from here?" "Yes, but it's difficult terrain," Mikhail warned. "The wounded will suffer." "They'll suffer more if we're captured," Olivia replied grimly. She contacted the other vehicles, instructing them to divert to the alternate route. In the second vehicle, Reynolds monitored the condition of his wounded men. Despite Olivia's emergency treatment, 2 remained critical, requiring constant attention from the team's medics. The rough terrain was taking a toll, each bump and jolt risking further damage to already compromised systems. "How much farther to the border?" he asked the driver. a silent man who had been introduced only as Victor. 60 kilometers, Victor replied in heavily accented English. But many patrols between here and there. The northern crossing is heavily guarded. Reynolds processed this information, weighing options against the deteriorating condition of his wounded. We need to increase pace if possible. 2 men won't survive another 6 hours at this rate. Victor nodded grimly, pushing the vehicle as fast as the difficult terrain would allow. The logging road was barely maintained, overgrown in sections and washed out in others. It required careful navigation, slowing their progress despite the urgency. In the third vehicle, Lieutenant Wilson was monitoring enemy communications through equipment provided by Mikhail's network. They're expanding the search perimeter, he reported over the secure channel. Helicopter patrols are being mobilized from the main base. Olivia acknowledged the information, quickly calculating how it would affect their journey. Helicopter patrols would significantly increase the risk of detection, especially in the more open terrain they would need to cross before reaching the border. We need to reach the forest cover at Sector 7 before the air assets are fully deployed, she instructed. Maximum speed through the next valley, then radio silence once we hit the tree line. The 3 vehicles increased pace, pushing through difficult terrain with urgent purpose. They had cleared the immediate danger zone around the cave system, but enemy forces were adapting quickly, expanding their search patterns and mobilizing additional assets. As they navigated a particularly exposed section of the route, a distant sound caught Olivia's attention. The rhythmic thump of helicopter rotors approaching from the southeast. Air patrol incoming, she warned over the secure channel. All vehicles seek cover immediately. The 3 SUVs diverged from the logging road, moving deep into the forest where the dense canopy would provide concealment from aerial observation. They positioned the vehicles beneath the thickest sections of foliage, covering them with pre-prepared camouflage materials that Mikhail's team had distributed. Olivia and Reynolds moved to a position where they could observe the helicopter's flight path without being detected. The aircraft was following a standard search pattern, methodically covering the valley below with forward-looking infrared sensors capable of detecting vehicle heat signatures. They're using a grid search, Reynolds noted. Thorough, but predictable. Olivia nodded, studying the helicopter's movement pattern. They'll pass directly over our position in approximately 3 minutes. The canopy should provide adequate concealment if the vehicles have cooled sufficiently. Reynolds glanced at her, impressed by the technical assessment. You've done this before. Theoretical training, Olivia replied. My father was thorough in covering helicopter evasion techniques. As the helicopter approached, everyone maintained absolute stillness, aware that movement could be detected even through dense foliage. The wounded were secured in the vehicles, medics maintaining treatment as silently as possible. The minutes stretched painfully as the helicopter passed overhead, its sensors sweeping the forest below. Olivia and Reynolds remained motionless, barely breathing as the aircraft hovered briefly before continuing its search pattern toward the eastern valley. Clear, Olivia finally announced, watching the helicopter disappear beyond the mountain ridge. But they'll be back with a more comprehensive search pattern. We need to move now. The teams returned to their vehicles, resuming their journey with increased urgency. The encounter had demonstrated the precariousness of their situation. They were being actively hunted across hostile territory, with limited options for concealment and dwindling time before the wounded reached critical status. 50 kilometers to the border, Mikhail reported as they rejoined the logging road. But the final approach will be the most dangerous. The crossing point is monitored by fixed patrols and regular drone surveillance. Olivia studied her tactical tablet, where real-time intelligence from network assets was constantly updating. The southeastern approach shows minimal patrol activity in the last 6 hours. We'll divert there. That route adds 15 kilometers, Mikhail warned. Through difficult terrain. The wounded can't afford any delays from engagement, Olivia replied firmly. We need a clean approach, even if it's longer. She relayed the updated route to the other vehicles, coordinating the approach to ensure they remain dispersed enough to avoid detection, but close enough to provide mutual support if necessary. In the command center, Colonel Hargrove received the latest satellite imagery, showing the 3 vehicles had resumed movement after temporarily seeking cover from air patrols. They're making good progress, Reeves reported, but enemy search patterns are intensifying. 2 additional helicopter patrols have been deployed from the main base. Hargrove studied the tactical display, noting the increasing density of enemy activity between the Delta team's current position and the border. "What's their current route?" "They appear to be diverting southeast," Reeves replied, tracing the projected path on the display. "Longer route, but avoiding the heaviest patrol concentrations." "Smart," Hargrove murmured. "Blackwood is prioritizing a clean approach over speed. The extraction team is in position at the border," Thompson reported. "Medical evacuation helicopters standing by with full trauma teams." Hargrove nodded, though his expression remained tense. The extraction team was positioned at the exact coordinates provided to Olivia, but the increasing enemy activity made the border crossing increasingly dangerous. If the Delta team was detected during the final approach, the resulting engagement could be catastrophic. "Can we provide any additional support?" Thompson asked. Hargrove shook his head reluctantly. "Negative. Any official military action across that border would trigger an international incident. The extraction team is already operating at the absolute limit of plausible deniability." This was the reality they faced. Despite the 50 lives at stake, political considerations created boundaries that even a full colonel couldn't cross. The Delta team's survival now rested entirely on the shoulders of a civilian woman operating an unauthorized intelligence network in hostile territory. As the journey continued, the condition of the wounded operators deteriorated. In the lead vehicle, Olivia assisted the medic with emergency procedures, applying techniques her father had taught her for maintaining critical patients in austere conditions. "The sergeant won't survive another 4 hours without advanced medical intervention," the medic reported grimly. "The chest wound is causing progressive respiratory failure." Olivia made a quick decision. "We need to reduce our timeline. Contact the other vehicles. We're converging now and taking the direct route to the border. That path crosses 2 known patrol zones," Mikhail warned. "We'll have to deal with that when it happens," Olivia replied. "These men don't have 4 more hours." The 3 vehicles converged at a predetermined rendezvous point, allowing Reynolds to assess the situation firsthand. The news wasn't good. 2 operators were now in critical condition, requiring immediate advanced medical care to survive. "We need to push through directly to the border," Olivia explained, showing Reynolds the route on her tactical tablet. "It crosses known patrol zones, but reduces our timeline by nearly 2 hours." Reynolds studied the proposed route, weighing the tactical risks against the medical necessity. "My men come first," he decided. "We'll take the direct route and deal with any resistance as it comes." With the decision made, the team reorganized. The most critically wounded were consolidated in the lead vehicle with the best medical support. The most combat-effective operators were distributed among all 3 vehicles to provide security. Weapons and ammunition were redistributed to ensure maximum defensive capability. 3 kilometers to the first patrol zone," Mikhail reported as they resumed their journey. "Standard procedure is 2-man teams patrolling established routes at 30-minute intervals. We'll time our crossing between patrols," Olivia instructed. "Maximum speed through the exposed sections, then regroup in the forest beyond." As they approached the patrol zone, Olivia coordinated with network assets who were monitoring enemy movements through various means. Everything from simple observation posts to sophisticated signal interception. The intelligence provided a clear picture of patrol patterns, allowing them to identify a 15-minute window between team rotations. "Now," Olivia commanded as the window opened. The 3 vehicles accelerated through the patrol zone, maintaining maximum speed while navigating the difficult terrain. They crossed the exposed area in less than 5 minutes, reaching the forest beyond without detection. "First zone clear," Olivia reported over the secure channel. 20 kilometers to the next challenge point." In the command center, Hargrove watched the heat signatures of the 3 vehicles moving with increased speed toward the border. "They've changed routes," he observed, taking a more direct path now. "Likely due to the condition of the wounded," Reeves suggested. The latest communication from Major Reynolds indicated 2 critical cases requiring immediate evacuation. Hargrove nodded grimly. "Alert the medical teams at the extraction point. We may have multiple critical casualties requiring immediate air transport." As the Delta team pushed toward the border, the race against time became increasingly desperate. The wounded operators were fighting for survival, their conditions deteriorating despite the best efforts of the medics. The vehicles pushed through difficult terrain at dangerous speeds, prioritizing time over caution. The final patrol zone loomed ahead, a well-monitored area just 5 kilometers from the border crossing. Unlike the previous zone, this one featured continuous surveillance through both ground patrols and fixed observation posts. "We can't slip through undetected," Mikhail warned. "The coverage is too comprehensive." Olivia studied the tactical display, where network intelligence showed the distribution of enemy forces throughout the patrol zone. "We don't need to avoid detection entirely. We just need to create enough confusion to get through before they can organize an effective response." She outlined a plan that would use the 3 vehicles to maximum advantage, separating briefly to create multiple contact points, overwhelming the enemy's ability to respond coherently, then reconverging for the final push to the border. "It's high risk," Reynolds noted, "but I don't see a better option given our timeline." With the plan established, the 3 vehicles separated, each taking a different approach through the patrol zone. The tactic worked initially, creating confusion as enemy forces detected multiple penetrations of their security perimeter simultaneously. But as they pushed deeper into the zone, resistance intensified. The second vehicle came under fire from a patrol that had established a hasty roadblock, forcing them to divert through even more difficult terrain. "Contact, southeast quadrant," Lieutenant Wilson reported over the secure channel. 2 enemy vehicles in pursuit. "Maintain separation," Olivia instructed. "Reconverge at Point Delta only after breaking contact." The situation deteriorated rapidly as enemy forces mobilized in response to the intrusion. Helicopter patrols were redirected to the area, and additional ground units deployed to intercept the intruders. In the lead vehicle, Olivia and Mikhail pushed through increasingly difficult terrain, using routes that existed only in Thomas Blackwood's detailed maps. They evaded direct contact but were forced to navigate treacherous paths that slowed their progress and complicated the treatment of the wounded. 2 kilometers to the border, Mikhail reported, his voice tense as he navigated a particularly challenging section. "But enemy forces are converging from multiple directions." Olivia contacted the extraction team waiting at the border, updating them on the situation. "We're coming in hot, multiple pursuit elements, 2 critical casualties requiring immediate evacuation." "Understood," came the response. "Extraction team is ready, medical evacuation standing by." As they approached the final stretch to the border, the 3 vehicles reconverged, forming a tight convoy for the final push. Enemy forces were closing in from multiple directions, but the border and safety was less than 1 kilometer away. "Final sprint," Olivia announced over the secure channel. "Maximum speed, no stopping regardless of contact." The 3 vehicles accelerated toward the border crossing, pushing their engines to the limit over the rough terrain. Behind them, enemy vehicles gave pursuit, closing the distance with every passing second. 500 meters, Mikhail called out, his hands white-knuckled on the steering wheel as he navigated the treacherous path. Gunfire erupted from behind as the lead enemy vehicle came within range, rounds impacting the rear of their SUV. Olivia returned fire through the rear window, providing covering suppression as they made the final approach to the border. 200 meters, Mikhail reported, pushing the vehicle even harder. Ahead, they could see the extraction team deployed in defensive positions at the border crossing, ready to provide covering fire as soon as the vehicles crossed into safe territory. 100 meters. With a final surge of speed, the 3 vehicles crossed the border, immediately surrounded by the extraction team, who created a defensive perimeter as medical personnel rushed to the wounded. "Get the critical cases to the evacuation helicopters now," Reynolds ordered, helping to transfer the most severely injured operators from the vehicles to the waiting medical teams. Olivia coordinated with the extraction team, ensuring all 50 Delta operators were accounted for and receiving appropriate care. The wounded were prioritized for immediate evacuation, loaded onto helicopters that would transport them to advanced medical facilities. As the situation stabilized, Reynolds approached Olivia, who was standing slightly apart, watching the medical evacuation with intense focus. 50 operators extracted, he said simply. "All alive." "Because of you." Olivia nodded, the weight of the past 24 hours evident in her posture. "The network worked as my father designed it to." "It's more than the network," Reynolds replied. "It's what you did with it. Command abandoned us." "You didn't." As the last of the wounded were loaded onto evacuation helicopters, Colonel Hargrove's voice came through on the secure channel. "Blackwood, this is Colonel Hargrove." All 50 operators confirmed extracted. Mission accomplished. Olivia acknowledged the transmission, then turned to Mikhail and the local assets who had risked everything to support the operation. They would return across the border soon, disappearing back into their lives until the network needed them again. Your father would be proud, Mikhail said quietly, clasping her shoulder. You honored his legacy today. As the extraction helicopters lifted off, carrying the wounded to safety, Olivia watched them disappear into the distance. She had activated her father's network, navigated hostile territory, and rescued 50 men who had been declared unrecoverable. The mission was complete, but the implications were just beginning to unfold. The military hospital buzzed with controlled chaos as medical teams worked to stabilize the wounded Delta operators. 3 days had passed since the extraction, and the full impact of the operation was still unfolding across multiple levels of command. In a private room away from the main ward, Colonel Hargrove sat across from Olivia Blackwood, both nursing cups of coffee that had long since gone cold. All 50 will survive, Hargrove said, breaking the weighted silence. Even the 2 we thought wouldn't make it through transport. The doctors are calling it a miracle. Olivia nodded, relief evident in her exhausted features. The past 72 hours had been a blur of debriefings, explanations, and tense meetings with military officials struggling to categorize what had happened. It wasn't a miracle, she replied. It was preparation meeting opportunity. My father's network performed exactly as designed. Hargrove studied her carefully. In the harsh fluorescent lighting of the hospital, Olivia looked younger than her 29 years, the weight of her accomplishment seemingly at odds with her civilian status. That's what we need to discuss, he said, placing a thick folder on the table between them. Your father's network, your access to it, the implications of both. Olivia's expression remained neutral, but her posture shifted subtly, a defensive readiness that reminded Hargrove of special operators preparing for unexpected threats. 50 lives saved, she stated. Men who were declared unrecoverable, abandoned by official channels. I would think that outweighs administrative concerns about protocol. It's not that simple, Hargrove sighed, opening the folder to reveal a series of classified documents. What you did was unprecedented. A civilian accessing restricted intelligence networks, coordinating with foreign nationals not cleared through proper channels, conducting an unauthorized military extraction in hostile territory. Quote. He paused, meeting her gaze directly. By any standard interpretation of regulations, these actions constitute multiple security violations. In some quarters, they might even be classified as espionage. Olivia's eyes hardened. Espionage? I rescued 50 American operators using networks my father established during sanctioned operations. Networks that officially don't exist, Hargrove countered. Accessing information you shouldn't have clearance to obtain. That's the problem we're facing. The outcome was unquestionably positive. 50 lives saved when official channels had abandoned them. But the methods... He trailed off, allowing the implication to hang in the air between them. In the military's rigidly structured hierarchy, results sometimes mattered less than adherence to established protocols. Success through unauthorized channels could be viewed as more dangerous than failure through official ones. What happens now? Olivia asked directly. Before Hargrove could answer, the door opened to admit Major David Reynolds, still moving carefully from his own injuries but determined to join the conversation. What happens now, Reynolds said firmly, is that we acknowledge reality instead of hiding behind regulations. Hargrove didn't appear surprised by the interruption. Major Reynolds, you should be resting. I've rested enough, Reynolds replied, taking a seat beside Olivia. My men are alive because of Blackwood. Whatever administrative issues you're discussing need to account for that fact. The dynamics in the room shifted with Reynolds' arrival. No longer was it simply a colonel addressing a civilian who had violated protocols. Now it was also about a field commander supporting the person who had saved his entire team. That's precisely what we're trying to determine, Hargrove explained. The Joint Chiefs are divided. Some see the rescue as justification for immediate action to shut down unauthorized intelligence networks operating outside official control. Others recognize the value demonstrated by this operation. And where do you stand, Colonel? Olivia asked quietly. Hargrove closed the folder, his decision evident in the gesture. "I was at your father's memorial service, one of only 5 people authorized to attend. Thomas Blackwood saved my life in circumstances I'm still not permitted to discuss. I've spent the past 3 days fighting to ensure his legacy, including you, receives the recognition it deserves, rather than becoming a casualty of bureaucratic paranoia." Relief flickered briefly across Olivia's features before her composure returned. "What does that mean practically?" "It means I've proposed the establishment of a new program," Hargrove explained. "The Legacy Assets Network, officially recognizing and incorporating intelligence resources that currently exist outside standard channels." "Including my father's network," Olivia concluded. "With you as its primary administrator," Hargrove confirmed. "Under official sanction, with proper authorization and oversight." The offer hung in the air between them. It represented a dramatic shift from the traditional military approach of dismantling unauthorized systems. Instead, Hargrove was proposing to legitimize Thomas Blackwood's network, bringing it within official channels while preserving its unique capabilities. "Why?" Olivia asked simply. "Because what you demonstrated isn't just about saving 50 lives, impressive as that was," Hargrove replied. "It's about recognizing that some intelligence assets can't be replicated through standard channels. Your father built something unique. Relationships based on personal trust. Knowledge passed down through direct experience rather than institutional training. Systems designed to operate when official channels fail." Reynolds nodded in agreement. "What you did shouldn't have been possible according to standard operational doctrine, but it worked when everything else failed." Olivia considered the proposal, understanding its unprecedented nature. The military rarely incorporated external systems without completely dismantling and rebuilding them according to established protocols. What Hargrove was suggesting represented a fundamental shift in approach. "My father built his network on personal relationships," she said carefully. "People loyal to him, not to an institution. Converting that into an official program would change its fundamental nature." "Which is why you would remain its administrator," Hargrove explained. "The people in that network trust you because you're Thomas Blackwood's daughter. We're not proposing to dismantle what works. We're proposing to give it official sanction and the resources to expand." Reynolds leaned forward, his expression earnest. "Do you know why Delta Force exists, Blackwood? Because conventional military structures couldn't adapt fast enough to emerging threats. So they created something new, something that operated with different rules. What your father built, what you now control, represents the same kind of innovation in intelligence gathering." The parallels were clear, and Olivia felt the weight of the decision before her. Accepting Hargrove's offer would bring her father's network into the light, providing resources and protection that had been lacking. But it would also mean surrendering some measure of autonomy, accepting oversight from a system her father had often circumvented. "I need to know one thing," she said finally. "Would this have happened if I hadn't activated the network to rescue the Delta team? Would anyone have recognized its value if 50 men hadn't been at stake?" The question cut to the heart of institutional thinking, the tendency to recognize innovation only in crisis, to value unconventional approaches only when conventional ones had catastrophically failed. "Honestly, no," Hargrove admitted. "Your father operated in the shadows by choice. His networks were known to only a handful of senior officers, and most of those have retired or died. Without this rescue operation, his legacy might have faded entirely. Sometimes it takes a demonstration of value to overcome institutional inertia," Reynolds added. "My men provided that demonstration by staying alive when they should have died." Olivia nodded slowly, processing the implications. "If I agree to this, I need guarantees. The local assets who risked everything, they need protection, compensation, recognition of their service." "Already included in the proposal," Hargrove confirmed, pulling a document from the folder. "Full protection for all network members, compensation packages commensurate with their contributions, pathways to citizenship for those who want it. And Mikhail? Special recognition for his role as primary network coordinator, including a substantial retirement package and relocation assistance if he chooses to leave the region." Olivia studied Hargrove's expression, looking for signs of bureaucratic deception. Finding none, she continued, "What about operational autonomy? My father's methods worked precisely because they weren't constrained by standard protocols. The proposal includes specified operational flexibility," Hargrove explained. "You would report directly to a special oversight committee, bypassing normal chain of command. Day-to-day operations would remain under your control, with review processes designed to incorporate lessons learned rather than impose restrictions. It was an extraordinary offer, recognition of the network's value coupled with unprecedented operational autonomy. The military rarely granted such freedom, especially to systems it hadn't created or to people it hadn't trained. "Why me?" Olivia asked, the question that had been lingering since the beginning. "You could take my father's files, his contacts, his methods, and assign a military intelligence officer to manage the network." Reynolds shook his head immediately. "It wouldn't work. Those people trust you because you're Thomas Blackwood's daughter. They followed your instructions because of that connection. No amount of official authority could replicate that personal loyalty." "Which is precisely why you're essential to this proposal," Hargrove added. "The network isn't just about intelligence gathering methods or contact lists. It's about relationships built on personal trust. You inherited that trust, along with your father's knowledge. The truth of this assessment was undeniable. Mikhail and the other local assets had responded to Olivia not because of any official authority, but because of who her father had been, and who she had proven herself to be. That kind of trust couldn't be transferred through institutional channels." "I need time to consider this," Olivia said finally. "Of course," Hargrove agreed. "But I should mention that there's significant pressure from certain quarters to shut down the network entirely. My proposal represents the best chance of preserving your father's legacy." The implied threat was clear: accept official incorporation or risk seeing the network dismantled entirely. It wasn't a choice Olivia had anticipated making when she activated her father's systems to rescue the Delta team. 48 hours, she requested. "I need to consult with key network members before making any decisions." Hargrove nodded, understanding the importance of those relationships. "Agreed. But during that time, maintain communications blackout with all network assets. The situation remains classified at the highest levels." As the meeting concluded, Reynolds lingered behind, waiting until Hargrove had left the room before speaking privately with Olivia. "There's something he's not telling you," Reynolds said quietly. "Something that might influence your decision." Olivia's attention sharpened. "What?" "Your father's methods, his approach to intelligence gathering, his emphasis on personal relationships over institutional structures. They've become increasingly relevant in today's operational environment." Reynolds explained, "The landscape has changed. Traditional intelligence networks are struggling to adapt to asymmetric threats and non-state actors. My father saw that coming years ago," Olivia noted. "It's why he built his network the way he did." "Exactly," Reynolds confirmed. "And now, after what you demonstrated, there's growing recognition that his approach might represent the future of intelligence gathering in certain regions. The Legacy Assets Network isn't just about preserving what he built, it's about expanding it, using it as a template for new systems." The implications were significant. Thomas Blackwood's methods, once considered unorthodox and potentially problematic, might now become standard practice. His legacy would extend beyond the specific networks he had established to influence the entire approach to intelligence gathering in complex environments. They want to replicate what he built, Olivia realized, using his methods, his philosophy. "With you as the living embodiment of those methods," Reynolds added. "Not just managing your father's network, but teaching others how to build similar systems. That's the real value they see in you." This perspective shifted the entire proposition. Hargrove wasn't simply offering to preserve Thomas Blackwood's existing network. He was proposing to expand his influence across the entire intelligence community, with Olivia as both practitioner and teacher. "I need to think about this," she said, the weight of the decision becoming even more significant. Reynolds nodded understanding. "Just remember, 50 men are alive because you chose action over protocol. That kind of thinking is exactly what's needed in today's world." As Reynolds departed, Olivia remained in the quiet room, contemplating the choice before her. Accepting Hargrove's offer would bring her father's methods into mainstream practice, potentially saving countless lives in future operations. But it would also mean surrendering some measure of the independence that had made those methods effective in the first place. 3 hours later, Olivia found herself in the hospital's recovery ward, moving quietly among the beds where Delta operators were healing from their ordeal. Some were sleeping, others talking quietly with medical staff or fellow team members. All were alive because she had activated a network that officially didn't exist. Major Reynolds had arranged access, understanding her need to see the tangible results of her decision to intervene. Each recovering operator represented a life that would have been lost if she had followed protocol instead of her father's example. Ms. Blackwood. The quiet greeting came from a sergeant lying in one of the recovery beds, his chest heavily bandaged from the wounds that had nearly claimed his life during the extraction. Olivia recognized him as one of the critically injured operators she had treated with her father's medical kit. "Sergeant Miller," she acknowledged, approaching his bedside. "How are you feeling?" "Alive," he replied simply. "Thanks to you. The doctor said I shouldn't have survived the journey to the border, but somehow I did." "You're stronger than they gave you credit for," Olivia said. Miller shook his head slightly. "It wasn't just strength. It was what you did in that vehicle. The medical techniques, the specialized equipment in your father's kit. The doctor said he'd never seen some of those hemostatic agents before." This was another aspect of Thomas Blackwood's legacy. Medical innovations developed through practical experience rather than institutional research, techniques refined in field conditions rather than laboratories. "My father believed in being prepared for worst-case scenarios," Olivia explained, "including medical emergencies where standard protocols might not be sufficient. That philosophy saved my life," Miller stated, "and not just mine. We all know we were abandoned by official channels, written off as unrecoverable, but you didn't accept that assessment." Around the recovery ward, other operators were taking notice of the conversation, some nodding in agreement, others watching with newfound respect. These were America's elite warriors, men who had survived the most rigorous selection processes and the most dangerous missions. Yet they had found themselves in a situation where official systems had failed them, where survival had depended on one woman's decision to activate networks that existed outside those systems. "Your father was a legend among special operations personnel," Miller continued. "Stories about his methods, his approach to impossible situations. They're part of the unofficial curriculum, but seeing those methods in action, experiencing firsthand what happens when someone refuses to accept failure as an option." He trailed off, emotion briefly overcoming his professional composure. Olivia understood what he couldn't articulate. The rescue operation had demonstrated the practical value of Thomas Blackwood's philosophy, the importance of redundant systems, personal relationships, and unconventional thinking when facing seemingly impossible challenges. "Thank you," she said simply, recognizing that words were inadequate for the connection they now shared. As she continued through the ward, other operators acknowledged her with nods of respect or quiet words of gratitude. By the time she reached the exit, Olivia had spoken with over 20 of the men she had helped rescue, each conversation reinforcing the impact of her decision to activate her father's network. Outside the recovery ward, she found Lieutenant Wilson waiting, his arm in a sling but otherwise recovered from the operation. "They're calling it the Blackwood extraction," he informed her. "Already becoming part of special operations lore, the impossible rescue that succeeded when official channels had given up." Olivia shook her head slightly. "It wasn't impossible, it just required different thinking." "Exactly," Wilson agreed, "and that's why it matters beyond the 50 lives saved. It's forcing a reevaluation of operational doctrine, challenging assumptions about what's possible and what isn't." This was perhaps the most significant aspect of what had happened. Not just the lives saved, but the principles demonstrated. Thomas Blackwood's methods had proven effective when standard approaches had failed, forcing institutional reconsideration of what constituted best practices in complex operational environments. "Colonel Hargrove mentioned you're being offered control of a new program," Wilson continued. "The Legacy Assets Network. Officially incorporating your father's methods into mainstream practice." Olivia studied him carefully. "News travels fast." "In certain circles," Wilson acknowledged. "Especially when it involves innovations that could save lives in future operations." "You think I should accept?" Olivia observed. Wilson considered his response carefully. "I think what you demonstrated isn't just about one successful operation. It's about an approach to complex challenges that could transform how we operate in contested environments. Your father saw possibilities where others saw only obstacles. That perspective is needed now more than ever." His assessment echoed what Reynolds had suggested earlier, that Thomas Blackwood's methods represented not just a historical artifact, but a potential template for future operations. The institution will try to standardize everything, Olivia noted, expressing her primary concern. Turn my father's flexible, relationship-based approach into rigid protocols and procedures. Wilson smiled slightly. Which is precisely why you need to be the one implementing it, to ensure the essence survives the institutionalization process. This perspective shifted Olivia's thinking. Perhaps the choice wasn't between preserving her father's methods in their original form or seeing them diluted through official channels. Perhaps it was about guiding the integration process, ensuring that the core principles remained intact even as the application expanded. I need to make a call, she decided, her path becoming clearer. With Wilson's assistance, Olivia secured a secure communications terminal in the hospital's restricted section. Despite Hargrove's instructions to maintain communications blackout, she needed to consult with one person before making her final decision. The connection took several minutes to establish, routed through multiple secure channels before finally connecting to a remote location in Eastern Europe. I did not expect to hear from you so soon, Mikhail's voice came through, distorted by encryption but still recognizable. I'm being offered control of a new program, Olivia explained without preamble. The Legacy Assets Network. Official recognition and support for what my father built, with me as primary administrator. Mikhail was silent for a moment, processing the implications. And you are concerned about how this would affect those of us in the field? Yes, Olivia confirmed. The network functions because of personal relationships, not institutional mandates. I need to know if official incorporation would compromise those relationships. Your father faced similar questions many times, Mikhail replied thoughtfully. He always said that systems were tools, nothing more. What mattered was the purpose they served and the people who implemented them. That doesn't really answer my question, Olivia noted. Mikhail chuckled softly. Perhaps not directly. But consider this. We followed your instructions not because of any official authority, but because you are Thomas Blackwood's daughter. You honored his legacy by refusing to abandon those men. That kind of commitment transcends institutional boundaries. So you think I should accept the offer? I think you should consider what your father would do, Mikhail suggested. He built his networks outside official channels because that was necessary at the time, but he always understood that systems must evolve to remain effective. This perspective brought clarity to Olivia's thinking. Her father had built his networks in response to specific operational needs, adapting his methods to the realities he faced. If those realities had changed, if official recognition now offered advantages rather than limitations, he would have adjusted accordingly. Thank you, Mikhail, she said, her decision crystallizing. For everything. The honor has been mine, he replied. Your father would be proud of what you have accomplished. Not just the lives saved, but the wisdom shown in how you saved them. As the secure connection terminated, Olivia felt a sense of resolution settling over her. The path forward was becoming clear, shaped by the lives she had helped save and the legacy she had inherited. 24 hours later, Olivia sat across from Colonel Hargrove in a secure conference room at the Pentagon. The folder containing the Legacy Assets Network proposal lay open between them, its contents now familiar to both. I've considered your offer, Olivia began, her decision made. I'm prepared to accept leadership of the Legacy Assets Network, with certain conditions. Hargrove nodded, unsurprised. Name them. First, all local assets receive the full protection and compensation packages outlined in your proposal, without exception. Their loyalty to my father's network must be honored. Agreed, Hargrove confirmed. Already approved at the highest levels. Second, I maintain operational control over all existing network assets. Any expansion or integration with official channels must be gradual and approved by me personally. Hargrove considered this requirement carefully. That can be arranged, with quarterly review processes to ensure alignment with strategic objectives. Third, Olivia continued, the core principles of my father's approach must be preserved. Relationship-based intelligence gathering, redundant systems designed to function when official channels fail, operational flexibility in complex environments. Those principles are precisely why we're establishing this program, Hargrove assured her. Your father's methods have proven their value. Our goal is to expand their application, not dilute their effectiveness. Olivia studied him carefully, looking for any signs of bureaucratic deception. Finding none, she proceeded to her final condition. Fourth, I want Major Reynolds assigned as military liaison to the program. Someone who has experienced firsthand the value of these methods, and who understands why they work. This request surprised Hargrove slightly. Reynolds is a field commander, not an intelligence officer. Exactly, Olivia confirmed. I need someone who thinks like an operator, who understands the practical application of intelligence rather than just its collection. Someone who has personally experienced the consequences when official systems fail. Hargrove considered the request, recognizing its strategic value. I'll have to clear it with Delta Command, but I don't foresee any objections. Reynolds has been vocal about the importance of what you accomplished. With all conditions addressed, Olivia reached for the folder, signing the acceptance document with a steady hand. The Legacy Assets Network was now official. Thomas Blackwood's methods incorporated into mainstream practice under his daughter's guidance. Your father would be proud, Hargrove said as he countersigned the document. Not just of the lives saved, but of how you've secured his legacy. Olivia thought about the 50 operators recovering in the hospital, men who would have died if she had followed protocol rather than her father's example. She thought about Mikhail and the other local assets who had remained loyal years after official operations concluded. She thought about the countless future operations that might benefit from the systems her father had designed, and she had now brought into official recognition. This isn't about preserving the past, she replied. It's about building on it. My father created these systems because he saw needs that weren't being met. Our job now is to ensure they continue to evolve. As the meeting concluded, Olivia felt a sense of purpose that transcended the immediate circumstances. The rescue operation had demonstrated the value of Thomas Blackwood's methods, but the Legacy Assets Network would extend that value far beyond a single mission. Ready to change how we think about intelligence gathering? Hargrove asked as they prepared to leave. Olivia thought about her father, his innovative thinking, his relationship-based approach, his commitment to leaving no one behind. She thought about the 50 lives saved because she had honored those principles when official channels had abandoned them. That change has already begun, she replied. We're just making it official. 6 months after the establishment of the Legacy Assets Network, Olivia Blackwood stood at the podium in a classified briefing room deep within the Pentagon. Before her sat 30 senior military officers and intelligence officials, all with the highest security clearances, all skeptical of the unconventional program she now directed. The Legacy Assets Network represented a fundamental shift in intelligence gathering methodology, prioritizing personal relationships over institutional structures, human networks over technological solutions, and operational flexibility over standardized protocols. The Corinian crisis demonstrated everything wrong with our traditional approach, Olivia began, referencing a recent intelligence failure that had nearly resulted in catastrophic consequences. We had satellite coverage. We had signals intelligence. We had official assets in place. Yet, we completely missed the developing situation until it was almost too late. She advanced her presentation to show a map overlaid with a spiderweb of connections. The network her father had established in that region years earlier now expanded under her direction. While our official channels were blind, the Legacy Network provided critical intelligence 7 days before the crisis point. Intelligence that came from sources no amount of technology could have accessed. A general in the front row leaned forward, his expression skeptical. And we're supposed to trust intelligence gathered through unvetted local assets with unknown motivations. Olivia had anticipated this question. These aren't unknown assets, General. They're people my father worked with for decades, who remained loyal even after official operations concluded. Their reliability has been demonstrated repeatedly, most recently in the Delta extraction operation. Quote, which was unauthorized, another officer pointed out. And saved 50 lives when official channels had abandoned them, Olivia countered smoothly. Results matter more than protocols in the real world. The room fell silent, the pointed reminder of the Delta rescue hanging in the air. Every person present knew the details of that operation, how 50 elite operators had been declared unrecoverable, abandoned by official channels, only to be rescued through networks that existed outside those channels, The Legacy Assets Network isn't about replacing existing systems, Olivia continued, shifting her approach. It's about complementing them, providing redundancy when traditional methods fail. It's about recognizing that in complex operational environments, personal relationships often yield insights that technology cannot. Major David Reynolds, now officially assigned as military liaison to the program, stepped forward to support her presentation. His presence added weight to her arguments, a decorated Delta commander publicly endorsing methods that challenged conventional wisdom. 6 months ago, I was trapped with my team in hostile territory, abandoned by official channels, Reynolds stated, his voice carrying the authority of lived experience. Today I'm helping implement the very methods that saved our lives, not because I'm an intelligence specialist, but because I've experienced firsthand what happens when traditional systems fail. He advanced the presentation to show operational statistics from the Legacy Network's first 6 months. Intelligence breakthroughs in regions where traditional assets had limited access, early warnings of developing situations that official channels had missed, relationships established with sources unreachable through standard protocols. This isn't theoretical, Reynolds emphasized. This is practical application of methods proven effective in the most demanding circumstances imaginable. The mood in the room began to shift, skepticism giving way to cautious interest. The Legacy Assets Network represented a challenge to institutional thinking, but the results were becoming difficult to ignore. What makes these networks different? Asked a senior intelligence official. We've been running human intelligence operations for decades. Olivia recognized the critical nature of this question. Traditional human operations are institutionally structured. Assets are recruited, vetted, and managed according to standardized protocols. The Legacy approach inverts that model, building networks around existing relationships, cultural connections, and personal loyalty. She displayed a case study from a recent operation in Central Africa, where a developing crisis had been identified through the Legacy Network weeks before official channels detected warning signs. Our local asset in this case wasn't recruited through standard protocols. He was a former medic who had worked with my father 15 years ago during a humanitarian operation. That personal connection, maintained through years of consistent support, yielded intelligence that no amount of technological surveillance could have provided. The central innovation of the Legacy approach was becoming clear, its foundation in human relationships rather than institutional structures. Thomas Blackwood had understood that loyalty to individuals often ran deeper than loyalty to organizations, especially in regions where official institutions had limited credibility. And when these personal connections fail, challenged another officer, when your assets are compromised or relationships deteriorate, they fail less often than institutional connections, Olivia replied confidently, because they're built on mutual respect and demonstrated reliability rather than financial incentives or coercion. But when they do fail, we have redundant systems in place, multiple sources covering the same operational areas, cross-verification protocols, technological backup where appropriate. She advanced to another case study, showing how the network had adapted when a key asset was compromised during operations in Southeast Asia. The redundant structure allowed us to maintain intelligence-gathering capability even after losing the primary source. Traditional networks typically collapse when key assets are compromised. The Legacy approach anticipates failure points and builds accordingly. As the briefing continued, Olivia detailed the expansion of the network over the past 6 months. New regions covered, additional assets integrated, innovative methodologies implemented. What had begun as Thomas Blackwood's personal intelligence system had evolved into a comprehensive approach that complemented and sometimes superseded traditional methods. The core principles remain consistent, she explained. Relationship-based intelligence gathering, redundant systems designed to function when official channels fail, operational flexibility in complex environments. What's changed is the scale of application and the institutional support. Colonel Hargrove, who had championed the program from its inception, joined the presentation for the final section. His endorsement carried significant weight, a respected senior officer publicly supporting methods that challenged conventional wisdom. 6 months ago, I proposed the Legacy Assets Network because 50 lives had been saved when traditional approaches failed, Hargrove stated. Today, I'm supporting its expansion because it has proven its value repeatedly in operational environments where conventional methods struggle. He displayed a map showing regions where the legacy network now operated alongside traditional intelligence-gathering systems, providing complementary insights, redundant verification, and occasionally contradicting official assessments in ways that had proven critically important. This isn't about replacing existing systems, Hargrove emphasized. It's about recognizing that different challenges require different approaches. The legacy methodology excels precisely where traditional methods often fail, in regions with limited infrastructure, complex cultural dynamics, and historical distrust of official institutions. As the briefing concluded, Olivia sensed a shift in the room's atmosphere. The initial skepticism had given way to thoughtful consideration, even among the most traditionally minded officers. The results were becoming difficult to dismiss, regardless of ideological resistance to the methods. Questions? She invited, prepared for the final challenge. A senior admiral who had remained silent throughout the presentation finally spoke. Thomas Blackwood operated outside normal channels because he felt constrained by them. How do you maintain that innovative spirit while operating within the institution you're now part of? It was the fundamental question: how to preserve the essence of an approach built outside institutional structures while bringing it within those same structures. Olivia had been wrestling with this challenge since accepting leadership of the program. By remembering that systems exist to serve people, not the other way around, she replied. My father built his networks outside official channels because that was necessary at the time. We're now bringing those methods within the institution not to constrain them, but to expand their application where they can do the most good. She paused, considering how to articulate the philosophy that guided her approach. The Legacy Assets Network isn't about preserving the past, it's about building on it, adapting core principles to meet evolving challenges. My father understood that effective intelligence gathering is fundamentally about human relationships, about trust, reliability, and mutual respect. Those principles remain valid regardless of institutional context. The Admiral nodded slowly, satisfied with the response. As the briefing room cleared, Olivia remained at the podium, reviewing her notes and reflecting on the journey that had brought her to this point. 6 months earlier, she had been a civilian cryptography specialist with access to classified networks that officially didn't exist. Now she directed a program that was transforming how the military approached intelligence gathering in complex environments. Major Reynolds approached as the last of the senior officers departed. They're convinced, he observed. Even the traditionalists can't argue with the results anymore. Results help, Olivia agreed. But institutional change takes more than successful operations. It requires a fundamental shift in thinking. Which is exactly what's happening, Reynolds assured her. The Blackwood extraction wasn't just about saving 50 lives. It was about demonstrating an approach that challenges basic assumptions about how we operate in complex environments. This was the broader impact of what had begun as a desperate rescue mission, a re-evaluation of methodologies that had remained largely unchanged for decades. Thomas Blackwood's approach, once considered unorthodox and potentially problematic, was now influencing mainstream thinking about intelligence gathering and operational planning. Speaking of results, Reynolds continued, there's something you should see. He handed her a tablet displaying a secure message from Mikhail routed through the newly established legacy communications system. The message contained intelligence about a developing situation in a region where traditional assets had limited access. Early warning of a potential crisis that might otherwise have gone undetected until too late. Your father's network is still saving lives, Reynolds observed. Just in a different way now. Olivia studied the intelligence, recognizing its significance. The personal connections Thomas Blackwood had established years earlier were continuing to yield critical insights, now amplified through institutional support and resources. Forward this to the regional command immediately, she instructed, and activate the verification protocols. We need confirmation from multiple sources before escalating. As Reynolds departed to implement her instructions, Colonel Hargrove entered the briefing room, his expression serious but satisfied. The Joint Chiefs have approved full operational status for the Legacy program, he announced. No more probationary period, no more quarterly reviews. You've proven the concept, beyond any reasonable doubt. The news represented official validation of what Olivia had known since the Delta extraction, that her father's methods worked when traditional approaches failed, that relationship-based intelligence gathering offered insights unavailable through technological means, that personal loyalty often yielded more reliable information than institutional incentives. There's something else, Hargrove added, his expression softening slightly. The recommendation came with a posthumous commendation for your father. His methods, once considered unorthodox, are now recognized as innovative adaptations to complex operational environments. The recognition meant little compared to the lives saved, but it represented institutional acknowledgement of what Thomas Blackwood had understood years ahead of his time. That effective intelligence gathering in complex environments required approaches that transcended standard protocols and rigid hierarchies. He would have appreciated the irony, Olivia noted with a slight smile. Official recognition for methods developed specifically because official channels were too limiting. Hargrove chuckled softly. Thomas always said institutions were necessary but insufficient. He built systems that filled the gaps when official structures failed. Now those systems are becoming part of the institution itself, while hopefully retaining what made them effective in the first place, Olivia added, expressing the concern that had been with her since accepting leadership of the program. That's why you're essential to this transition, Hargrove emphasized. You understand both worlds, the institutional structures and the personal networks that exist beyond them. Your father built the foundation. You're building the bridge between his methods and their wider application. The metaphor captured the essence of Olivia's role, not merely preserving Thomas Blackwood's legacy, but expanding it, adapting core principles to new challenges while maintaining what had made those principles effective in the first place. As Hargrove departed, Olivia returned to her office in the Pentagon's secure section. The space reflected the dual nature of her position, officially sanctioned yet distinct from traditional military structures. Photographs of her father during various operations shared wall space with official commendations for the legacy program's achievements. Personal mementos from network members around the world sat alongside classified operational files. A secure communication from Mikhail awaited her attention, an update on network activities in Eastern Europe, where the systems Thomas Blackwood had established continued to yield critical intelligence unavailable through official channels. Your father would be proud, Mikhail wrote in his typically direct style, not just of lives saved, but of wisdom shown in how you have expanded his work. The network grows stronger under your guidance, reaching places he only dreamed of accessing. The validation from her father's most trusted asset meant more than any official recognition. Mikhail had worked with Thomas Blackwood for decades, understanding the philosophy behind his methods better than any institutional analyst ever could. Olivia's response was equally direct. The principles remain the same, only the application expands. This was the essence of her approach, preserving the core philosophy while adapting methodologies to meet evolving challenges. Thomas Blackwood had built networks based on personal relationships because he understood that human connections often yielded insights that technology couldn't provide. Olivia was expanding those networks while maintaining their foundational principles. A knock at her office door interrupted her reflections. Major Reynolds entered, accompanied by a young intelligence officer Olivia didn't recognize. This is Lieutenant Sarah Martinez, Reynolds introduced. Recently assigned to the Legacy program as part of the Expansion Initiative. She has an interesting background I thought you should hear firsthand. The lieutenant stepped forward, her posture professional but her expression revealing genuine emotion. Ms. Blackwood, I wanted to thank you personally. My brother was one of the Delta operators you rescued 6 months ago, Sergeant James Martinez. Olivia remembered the name, one of the wounded operators she had treated with her father's medical kit during the extraction. How is he doing? Fully recovered and back on active duty, Lieutenant Martinez replied, pride evident in her voice. He told me what you did, activating unofficial networks when official channels had abandoned them. It's why I requested assignment to this program. This represented another aspect of Thomas Blackwood's legacy, inspiring a new generation of intelligence professionals to think beyond institutional constraints, to recognize that effective operations sometimes required unconventional approaches. The Legacy program isn't about abandoning institutional structures, Olivia explained. It's about complementing them, providing redundancy when traditional methods fail. Your brother's experience demonstrates why that redundancy matters. Lieutenant Martinez nodded understanding. He said something similar. That systems exist to serve people, not the other way around. That when the system fails, you need alternatives ready to activate. This was the philosophical core of Thomas Blackwood's approach, recognizing that institutions were necessary but insufficient, that effective operations required both structured systems and flexible alternatives. That's precisely what we're building here, Olivia confirmed. Not a replacement for traditional intelligence gathering, but a complementary approach that excels where conventional methods struggle. As Reynolds and Lieutenant Martinez departed, Olivia returned to the secure communication from McHale. Considering its implications, the network Thomas Blackwood had built was evolving under her guidance, expanding beyond its original scope while maintaining the core principles that had made it effective in the first place. A year earlier, she had been a civilian cryptography specialist, with access to classified networks that officially didn't exist. Now she directed a program that was transforming how the military approached intelligence gathering in complex environments. The transition had begun with a desperate rescue mission. 50 Delta operators abandoned by official channels, saved through networks that existed outside those channels. The Legacy Assets Network represented more than just an intelligence gathering methodology. It embodied a philosophy that transcended institutional boundaries, recognizing that effective operations required both structured systems and flexible alternatives, that official channels sometimes failed precisely where unofficial networks excelled. In her private moments, Olivia sometimes wondered what her father would think of how his methods had evolved, from unauthorized networks operating in the shadows to officially sanctioned systems influencing mainstream practice. She suspected he would appreciate the irony while recognizing the necessity of adaptation. Thomas Blackwood had built his networks outside official channels because that was required at the time. Olivia had brought those networks within institutional structures because that was now necessary for their continued effectiveness and expanded application. Different approaches serving the same fundamental purpose: saving lives when traditional systems failed. As she prepared for a meeting with the expansion team, Olivia reflected on the journey that had brought her to this point. The rescue operation that had saved 50 lives had also launched a transformative process within the intelligence community, challenging assumptions, demonstrating alternatives, proving that unconventional methods could succeed where traditional approaches failed. The Legacy Assets Network wasn't just about preserving Thomas Blackwood's methods. It was about building on them, adapting core principles to meet evolving challenges, extending their application beyond what even he had envisioned. In her office, surrounded by reminders of both her father's legacy and its expanding influence, Olivia Blackwood continued the work she had begun 6 months earlier. Not just saving lives in immediate crises, but transforming systems to prevent future ones. Different approach, same fundamental purpose, leaving no one behind, regardless of official assessment. The nameplate on her desk captured this dual identity. Olivia Blackwood, Director, Legacy Assets Network, officially sanctioned yet distinct from traditional structures. Daughter of an innovator who had operated outside institutional boundaries. Now, bringing those innovations within those same boundaries while preserving their essential nature. In the field, Mikhail and other network members continued gathering intelligence unavailable through official channels. At the Pentagon, analysts incorporated this intelligence into comprehensive assessments that influenced operational planning at the highest levels. And around the world, operators knew that if official systems failed, alternative networks stood ready. The living legacy of a Green Beret commander who had understood that the most effective insurance policies were the ones you built yourself. Systems exist to serve people, Thomas Blackwood had often said. Not the other way around. His daughter had taken that philosophy and expanded its application, building bridges between institutional structures and personal networks, creating systems flexible enough to adapt when rigid protocols failed. The rescue operation that had saved 50 Delta operators had been just the beginning, demonstrating principles that now influenced intelligence gathering methodology across multiple operational theaters. In the end, Thomas Blackwood's greatest legacy wasn't the specific networks he had built or the operational techniques he had developed. It was the philosophy he had passed to his daughter, the understanding that effective systems required both structure and flexibility, both institutional support and personal relationships, both technological capabilities and human connections. Olivia had honored that legacy not by preserving it unchanged, but by expanding it, adapting core principles to meet evolving challenges while maintaining what had made those principles effective in the first place. Different approach, same fundamental purpose, ensuring that no one was left behind, regardless of official assessment. The Legacy Assets Network continued to grow under her guidance, reaching regions her father had only dreamed of accessing, influencing practices he had only hoped might change. His methods, once considered unorthodox and potentially problematic, were now recognized as innovative adaptations to complex operational environments, saving lives when traditional approaches failed. In her quiet moments, Olivia sometimes spoke to her father's memory, updating him on how his work had evolved. The principles remain the same, she would say. Only the application expands. And in those moments, she could almost hear his response. Practical, focused on results rather than recognition. Good, now keep building. There's always more work to be done. And so she did, continuing the legacy not through rigid preservation, but through thoughtful expansion. Different approach, same fundamental purpose. Building systems that served people when they needed them most, regardless of official protocol or institutional limitation. Thomas Blackwood's daughter had learned his most important lesson well. When official channels declare something impossible, that's precisely when alternative networks become essential. 50 lives saved had been just the beginning. The true legacy was in the lives that would never be at risk because intelligence failures had been prevented before they occurred. Different approach, same fundamental purpose, leaving no one behind, regardless of official assessment. The Legacy Assets Network continued its work, the living embodiment of a philosophy that transcended institutional boundaries. Systems exist to serve people, not the other way around. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.